Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. We're back on the dev server, and it's time to have a look at two new planes that are coming in the next major update. The reason why I'm grouping them together in one video is, well, because they're basically the same. You have the HE-115 C-1, which is a rank 1 battle rating 1.3 hydroplane for the Germans, and you can actually find it after the Do-17s, and then before the Beaver 138, and then also you have the Swedish T2. Not as adventurous name, but at least there. And this vehicle is actually the first in the line just before the B3C, which you can see here. So what are the differences between these vehicles, and why are they different BRs, even though they look basically the same? The main thing is the armaments that are different on these vehicles. So if you actually have a look at the HE-115, it has a 7.92 here. It has a 7.92 here in the nose, and then also a 15mm gun, which kind of goes along this belt here. And then also it has two backwards-facing 7.92mm MG17s, which are stuck out of the engines, or at least stuck out of the, shell of the engine. So kind of interesting that they have this setup, but a little bit odd. Also, at the same time, for the 115, it has a torpedo, two incendiaries, a 500 kilo, and also two 250s. For the other one, the T2, which is in the Swedish tech tree, you have access to only two 8mm, so you don't get those weird guns on the engines, you don't get the 15mm, and yeah, it kind of sucks. So the other thing is, of course, the secondary armaments. You only get two 250 kilo bombs, or one 500, or the torpedo. So overall, the Swedish one definitely is worse at defending itself, and also a few offensive actions, but not a huge difference between them. The vehicle, being a hydroplane, means that it may have more uses in War Thunder than many, meaning that it can capture zones in naval, which is something that you don't see a lot of vehicles being able to do. Also, you do have the BMW 132K engines. You can see here, they have a maximum power of 810 each, with a takeoff power closer to 1,000, so nearly 2,000 horsepower to move this behemoth. The other features of this vehicle are pretty limited, like the armor itself. It has a little bit for the tail gunner, and then also the seat is 10mm for the pilots, but we're not looking at something absolutely crazy. Instead, what you're looking for out of this vehicle is something to run with some lower tier lineups. So for example, if you're playing some low coastal fleet, you can run it at 1.7, maybe 2.0, maybe not reserve. And then for army, even though it has, not great flight characteristics and not great survivability, what it does have is it has a pretty decent bomb load at the end of the day. You could bring it along with a 1.3 lineup, the Panzer 3F or the Panzer 38T and friends, so that could be useful, even though you already have the Ju-87R2, which can carry the big donkey bomb. This one may be a secondary option to that, to be able to bring different stuff along. So the vehicle itself, it does have an enclosed bomb bay, which does actually matter now, and I know that sounds really weird, but the reason why it matters is because now people can actually shoot your ordnance while it's attached and then you explode, so the bomb bay might actually give a little bit of extra shielding for this vehicle compared to other ones that are around the place. And also, since this update doesn't seem to have a lot of propeller aircraft, it is kind of just nice to see some propeller aircraft in the house, in the form of this one and also the T2. And another thing I also want to mention is I want to kind of show you how the guns work, and the fact that even though it says this thing has a cockpit placeholder, this cockpit placeholder is actually really cool. I don't know if it's actually a cockpit placeholder or just, generally meant to be one. So you can see on the guns, you can see that the guns on the back, they have a very limited traverse on them. So they can move very slightly, but it's an incredibly small amount. So you're going to be, hoping that this one here does the majority of the damage for you. It does have a gun facing forward as well, so Once again, you do have a defensive armament looking forward. It does actually have a pretty good set of angles on it. It might actually be a bit too much. The fact that you can cover all of this area in front of you, it does seem a little bit too much. Maybe they'll sort out the angles there. Then also on top of it, you have of course the cannon, or the 15mm that is there too. So in that setup, if you just have a look at the guns, they're generally not too bad. Like, they work pretty well. The thing is fully modeled. This really feels like a user-made vehicle, by the way. Usually when we see these types of vehicles in game, they usually have some kind of blemish to them, which is why this like stinks of a user-made vehicle, because it doesn't seem to have any blemishes at all. And if you have a look at like the cockpits, like this is a placeholder cockpit. Like, this looks pretty done to me. At the end of the day, you can see the actual feet respond, you know, the arm responds when you go up and down. This just seems ready to go. You even have all of the gauges on the engine, so you can see them, because there's not enough area in the cockpit. And then also, you know, the aim is completely done. Even the compass at the top is completely done. So yeah, it just seems odd to me that this is seen as, like, you know, as done as it is. So it does get access to a torpedo. The torpedo stats on it aren't very good, but also one thing does have to be mentioned is the fact that Germany really does not get a lot of torpedo vehicles. Hopefully in the future they will do, so you know, you can actually be able to use them a little bit more effectively. But right now, this is adding to a very small list of different vehicles that do have access to the torpedoes for them, and that means, you know, it has a little bit more use in naval. And even though it's pretty slow, and even though it's a huge target, and it'll probably take only like a 7.5mm to take it out, it at least gives you something extra to be able to do with the vehicle. The other one as well is you can kind of drop the torpedo and then land. I always like that idea. Or the wheels can just fall off and then you can hit yourself with your own torpedo. So that's also a possibility if you want to. And you can, of course, like, you can land on the ground if you want to. And also, you can't unfortunately drop the torpedo when you're on the ground, but what you can do is, even if you're just slightly up, you can then drop it eventually when you get enough altitude. Basically, just about 10 meters will do it, and then you can get it off, so that's pretty fun. The fact that this is coming to 2 separate tech trees as well is nice. There's been a lot of vehicles which are very similar to each other, if not copy and paste, coming to different tech trees. And the Mi-8s, for example, a lot of the Hungarian stuff with the ZSU-57, the Shilka, the helicopters, even the OH-58D being put into 2 tech trees, and technically the Barak 2 and the F-16C now have very similar, if not the same capabilities, showing that at least, you know, they're going to play very similarly too. And then a lot of other vehicles that are coming in which are similar. So there's a lot of vehicles in this one which are pretty copy-pasty, but also they do fill out a lot of lineups and do, you know, kind of help out in a lot of different ways. For stuff like this, like nation, for Germany, it doesn't really need this vehicle. You know, Sweden kind of does when it comes to its early tiers, but it just adds another string to the bow, you know, and it just means that people can have a bit more fun with the vehicle, and I don't think this one really harms anybody, and just people can have, you know, a nice time with it. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Brendan Quinn, Vilneus, Character Fuel, Juan the Panda, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Merciless Reaper, Orange Tail, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Moxie, B. Young, Bareen, Peter Grayling, Alan Hacker, Sem Alslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R., and also Lafouche for supporting the channel.